Thank you so much. Well, good morning, guys. How are you doing? Good. It's so great to see you all. Just give me one moment here to kind of. Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. I'm just gonna get set up here, and we're gonna dive right in. I'm really excited. I think I last spoke just over a year ago. I think it's been. So it's been a while. But I'm really excited. I've just been working away at this message, and I'm just really excited for what the Lord has laid on my heart to share with you all this morning. So I am here to talk to you about a topic that I'm actually super passionate about because it's something that I actually struggle with all the time. It's something I've struggled with for many years, and I'm sure many of you will relate. It's something that I've really had to learn to deal with, and I still do now, and that is the fear of man. And so today we're going to talk about what is the fear of man and how can we begin to overcome it. So let's clarify one thing really quickly though before we start. The fear of man is not like the literal fear of like guys, like the male gender. Although you laugh, but I did have that fear once upon a time when I was really young, and I've been coming to Hillside my whole life, and I used to come to church, and I was really scared of just like grown men. Even my uncle, I was really scared of my uncle. And I would come to church, and I'd be like hiding behind my parents after the service, like while they talked to like Pastor Jerry or something. And grown men were just so big and intimidating to me. And so I would say that's a pretty legitimate fear, like no shame. But that's not what we're talking about today. No, we're talking about what the Bible calls the fear of man. So fear of man is defined as overly worrying about others' opinions of us and constantly seeking the approval of others. It's the strong desire to be accepted and praised by other people. That is what fear of man is. And the truth is, guys, we care too much. It's true. We care too much about how we look, how we perform, how much we earn, how much we achieve, right? All these things, they're often just in the forefront of our mind because we just care too much. And we all do it. We all do. I do it constantly. And I was actually writing this message a couple weeks ago. I was sitting in Starbucks, and I just started kind of like, jotting some ideas out, and I knew I wanted to talk about fear of man. And as I was sitting there for a couple hours, I noticed myself over and over again kind of worrying about like what the other people in that Starbucks are thinking. Like, did they notice that my hair was really messy? It hadn't been washed in like a week? Or did they think I was weird because I had all my books kind of laid out and I was like taking up a whole table? I don't know. I was so concerned about the most random and unnecessary things that I didn't need to be worrying about, and yet they were so prominent in my mind. I was so concerned about what these strangers in a cafe thought about what I was doing or how I looked. As kind of unnecessary as those worries and fears were, they were so prominent. And that's just what fear of man is and what it does. So the question we all need to ask ourselves when we kind of find ourselves in these situations when, again, we're just worrying too much about others' opinions and what they're thinking about us. The question that we need to ask all of ourselves is this: how valuable is it for me to be caring this much about it? How valuable is it for me to be caring this much about what other people think of me? Right? How valuable is it for me to be caring this much about that person's opinion? Right? What they think about what I'm doing or how I look. And some of you might be sitting here thinking right now, hey, Shiori, what's the big deal in caring about it though? Well, what's so bad about wanting to fit in, about wanting to be liked, about wanting to be like the people around me? Well, I thought I would just list off a couple for you up on the screen here. I just wrote down, I just kind of filled these in, a couple of consequences that I kind of came up with that just can really come from falling into fear of man when we just constantly dwell on others' perceptions of us. And so just to list off a couple, anxiety, that's a huge one, and lowered self-esteem, that's really big. Comparing ourselves to others, that's huge. Spiritual dryness, hindered relationships, insecurity, that's a really big one. People pleasing, I know so many of us do that. Compromising our values, compromised decision making. These are all just some of the consequences that can come with falling into fear of man and what it can lead you to. An example of this and really the effects of fear of man that we're going to look at in the Bible today is the story of King Saul. So we'll be looking at 1 Samuel, and I'm really sorry, guys, we don't have time to look through everything as much as I'd like to, but I do really encourage you guys, go back into your Bibles this week, crack open 1 Samuel, and really read more in depth the full story of King Saul and kind of what was going on here, because it's really, really interesting. But we're gonna look at King Saul, his story a little bit, kind of what happened. And so a little bit about Saul. He was first introduced sort of around chapter 9, I think, in the book. And he's described at the beginning as the most handsome man in all of Israel. So already, Saul, he seems like a pretty cool guy, right? And so a little bit about Israel. Israel wanted a king, okay? So Israel was God's chosen people, right? And they were kind of looking at their neighboring nations. They were looking at the other people in the world, and they were like, okay, we want to be like them, and we want to have an actual king to rule over. So already we kind of see the Israelites kind of giving into fear of man, right? Because already they're looking at the other nations, they're kind of comparing themselves, and they want to be like them. And so Samuel, the prophet, goes to God and says the Israelites want a king. And so God gives the people what they want. He gives them a king, and that is Saul. So Saul is introduced. He's the most handsome man in all of Israel, and he's anointed by God to rule over the Israelites. And we see through the beginning of Saul's reign that the Lord is clearly with King Saul, and he seems to be doing pretty well. But as we continue reading, we see that King Saul has a bit of a hard time always following the Lord's instruction, often because he wants to be kept in favor by the Israelites, his people. He wants them to like him, right? So when he's in battle and he wants his men that are fighting alongside him to like him, he allows them to keep cattle from their enemies after God specifically instructed him not to. So God actually says, and we read this in the scriptures, God commands Saul to destroy everything, take nothing back with you, leave it all. But Saul actually doesn't listen, and he allows his men to bring back cattle for themselves. Saul feels the pressure to be liked and accepted, even as a king, and this causes division between him and God through his disobedience. In chapter 15, verse 23, it reads, and this is talking about Saul, because Saul rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you as king. So we see that division, that Saul began falling into the fear of man, and that led him to disobey the Lord's commands, and now he has been rejected as king. So this leads to a new king being chosen. And who is that new king? Do we know? David, that's right. So yeah, David. So now we get to learn a little bit about David. And David, he quickly becomes a pretty popular guy. The Israelites like him. Even Saul likes him at first, right? David is first introduced to Saul by playing the lyre, which is an instrument, and Saul really likes him. And David actually goes, and many of us know the story, right? David went and defeated Goliath and led the Israelites to defeat the Philistines. And David quickly climbs the ranks of the army, and he gains a lot of success in a short amount of time. And the Israelites really, really like him. I mean, he defeated the giant Goliath. And the Israelites celebrate him, and it says this in Scripture. They sing in the streets, Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. Imagine being Saul hearing that. It's kind of rough. So for the next 8-ish chapters, we read of Saul. I mean, he's angry. He's jealous of David, right? He's probably going through something. He probably has a bit of a lowered self-esteem, right? He's probably comparing himself a little bit. Might be feeling a little insecure, right? And he actually goes after David and even tries to kill him, right? But he fails. The Lord was with David. But Saul had gone against God's will. He was putting man's approval over the Lord's. Saul was obedient to his people, but not to God, because he put more effort into being accepted and liked by people. And this led him down a rabbit hole of bad decisions, and he was even led to trying to kill David. And guys, this is what fear of man does. Now, when we compare ourselves to others, or, worry about what they think of us, we're not necessarily going to be driven to murder. That's not what I'm saying. But we do see some of the consequences that come with falling into the fear of man. Fear of man causes us to compromise our values. It quickly lowers our self-esteem. It leads us to bad decision-making and falling into peer pressure. And guys, this is why we need to learn to resist the fear of man. So let's talk about that a little bit. When we fall into fear of man, which we all do, right? I do it, we all do it, and we all will, right? There are two things that we need to do. So first thing we need to do when we kind of feel ourselves kind of falling into the fear of man, we need to look at and familiarize ourselves with the character of people and this world that we live in, right? We need to look at the character of people. And that is that the world is imperfect and people are flawed. Right? People judge, they misunderstand, they leave hate comments. We can see it just by taking out our phones. You open TikTok, Instagram, you scroll through those videos, you open the comment sections. We see it, right? We see the hate, we see the judgment, right? It's all there right in front of us because people are not perfect. None of us are, right? We all make mistakes. We all say nasty things. And the society that we live in, it expects us to perform. It expects us to measure up to meet its standards. And that's just the character of this world that we live in, this imperfect world. And we need to recognize that. But the second thing we need to do is we need to look at the character of Jesus. Right? And the character of Jesus is that Jesus is perfect and he makes no mistakes. He doesn't misjudge, right? He doesn't misunderstand. He doesn't compare to people. He doesn't leave hate comments, right? He doesn't make fun. No, he doesn't expect us to perform or always show our best side, right? He doesn't expect those things of us. And guys, it's so useless to try and meet everyone's expectations, to always seem perfect, because it's never going to be enough. We will never fully be satisfied. We're never going to gain everyone's acceptance or be liked by everyone. Guys, take a second and think to yourselves, try and come up with one person that maybe it's a celebrity, someone on TV, whoever, that is liked by absolutely everyone, right? Try and come up with one person who's never been judged, never received a hate comment, never had, a hater or whatever. Try and think of one person. Anyone? Yeah, I didn't think so. Because there isn't one, right? Everyone has received judgment, has received criticism, right? Everyone's messed up, right? There's not a single person on this world that is absolutely adored by absolutely everyone. It's just not possible, right? The truth is that we will never be enough. We'll never reach the perfect standard. We'll never gain all the success, right? But the good news is that while we are not enough, Jesus is enough for us. And that's the truth that I really want you guys to understand and grasp this morning, is that while we are not enough and we cannot be enough, that Jesus is already enough for us. And we're going to look at that a little further. Romans 5, verse 6 to 8, it says, "When we were utterly helpless, Christ came at just the right time and died for us sinners. Now, most people would not be willing to die for an upright person, though someone might perhaps be willing to die for a person who is especially good. But God showed his great love for us by sending Christ to die for us while we were still sinners." Guys, let that sink in for a moment, especially that last part, while we were still sinners. It doesn't say when we measured up. It doesn't say when we got it right. It doesn't say when we earned enough money, when we got the best grades, when we lost enough weight. No, it doesn't say when we became perfect or we met that perfect standard. No, it says when we were still sinners, when we were utterly helpless, God showed his great love. That's pretty heavy. And by the way, catch that us and that we used in the scriptures, right? While we were still sinners, Jesus died for us. And I hope you know that that includes you, right? He showed his great love for you. Let's just acknowledge that for a second, because that's a really big deal, that when we read this, guys, we need to understand that it's talking about us, right? That Christ thought of us, he loved us, he died for us, you, me, us. And so we read this, guys, while we were still sinners, Christ came and died for us. We read this, and then we worry so much about what the people on earth think about us, right? We care about what, someone in our gym class thought about our score on the beep test. We think about, what so-and-so thought about our outfit, or that conversation that we had and you said the wrong thing, whatever it is. How can we care about that so much when we read the scriptures and we come to know the truth that while we were still sinners, while we were imperfect, while we didn't measure up, Jesus still loved us and died for us? Colossians 2:8, it reads, don't let anyone capture you with empty philosophies and high-sounding nonsense that come from human thinking and from the spiritual powers of this world rather than from Christ. And what this is saying is don't listen to the world that constantly tells you to strive to meet their standards, to be successful by their worlds, to meet their expectations, right? Don't listen to that nonsense because that's what it is, but rather listen to what Jesus says. Listen to his truth, which says, hey, you aren't enough, but I'm enough for you. Right? That you don't need to measure up. You don't need to be perfect by the world's standards because you can't be anyway. But I'm enough for you, so come and be with me. Don't listen to the high-sounding nonsense that comes from human thinking, but rather listen to what Jesus says in his truth. And this world that we so greatly seek approval from, that is the same world that crucified a perfect man. The perfect man that we just read about, right? That died for us, that loved us so much. We seek approval from a world that tortured and crucified a perfect man on the cross. We try to meet the expectations of a world that hated a sinless man. And you want to talk about impossible standards. Well, there they are, right? We so deeply want the approval of a world that hated a sinless, perfect man. And yet we're still trying to reach its expectations. So why would we listen to such a world? Why would we put our worth in its standards over Jesus's? The truth is, guys, that people are always going to have their opinions on what we do, how we look, what we say, how we perform. And it's so important to realize that not everyone is going to love you or even like you, right? It kind of like sucks to hear that, but it's so true, right? Not everyone is going to always love or like you or everything that you do. There's always going to be someone judging, someone making fun, because we live in a flawed and imperfect world. That's just the truth. Not everyone's going to like you, but it's important to realize that that's okay, right? That's just the way it goes. It's okay, but it's even more important, though, to realize that Jesus did and does love you, and he does recognize every part of you, right? That he sees each and every part of you, even the parts that you conceal from the rest of the world, even the parts of you that you are embarrassed about, even you on your worst day, right? He sees you when you've messed up, when you don't look your best, when you say the wrong thing, when you screw up, whatever it is, Jesus sees you, and he still loves you more than anyone on this earth. Jesus, who is sinless, spotless, and perfect, he loves you. And again, I'm speaking to you. He loves you. Just let that sink in for a moment. So if Jesus, who is perfect and loving, if he chooses to personally love you and want to have relationship with you, why do we constantly value a person's opinion over his? Right? Because we looked at the character of people and we saw that it was flawed and imperfect. Right? And then we looked at the character of Jesus and we see how loving and sinless he is and how he paid the ultimate sacrifice for our sins. And we see which is more important, right? Which should we emphasize more and hold more value to? And the right answer would be Jesus's. Right? And the Bible actually clearly tells us why we should listen to God rather than to man. And in Proverbs 29:25, it reads, "The fear of man lays a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is safe." The fear of man lays a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is safe. So a snare is like a trap, and that's what the fear of man is. It's truly a trap. It's a trap in our minds, right? That's telling us that we need to be certain things, right? That we need to care about our weight and our looks and every single thing we do and say. It's telling us to care so much about, honestly, such unnecessary things. That's what it is. It's a trap. It's a trap of our mindset. So we need to delete the lies of this world telling us that we need to measure up and achieve this and do that, and instead place our trust in the Lord, who says, no, I am already enough for you. Right? The fear of man lays a snare, a trap, trapped in this mindset of, I need to be this, I need to be that, I need to look like this, I need to be like that person, right? And it's a trap because we're never going to reach that standard, right? the impossible standards that our society sets on us, that this world that hated a sinless man that we're constantly trying to gain full approval from, it's a trap because we're never gonna get there. But rather, we need to place our trust in the Lord, who says, hey, you are not perfect, but I am. You are not called to be perfect, but rather you are called to be with perfection, and that's Jesus. And that's what he says, right? The fear of man lays a trap, but whoever trusts in the Lord and what he says is safe. And what you will find when we do that, we find peace, right? And unlike the list of consequences that we looked at earlier, right, putting our trust in God, it brings us peace, and it helps us to overcome. It doesn't give us more anxiety, right? It doesn't make us compare ourselves to more people, but rather when we place our identity, right, and believe in the truth that Jesus is enough for us and that he loves us and that we don't have to measure up to this world because we have real relationship with Christ, we find peace. And I know that personally in my life, I've been there, guys, and I know it's so easy. I mean, like I said at the beginning, I did it while writing this message, right? We fall into that trap. We worry about what people think about us. We worry about what people might say. We worry about their opinions and their perceptions of us. But the true peace that we gain from placing our trust in the Lord, we cannot get that anywhere else, right? I know that personally, I know how much better it is to place my identity in being a child of God rather than what the world thinks of me. And I really want you guys to grasp that so much this morning, that we can find freedom from that, right? We can find freedom from these fears, from the trap that says you need to be like this, and you need to be like that, and you need to look like that, and you need to have this job and this much money and be in this kind of relationship and right, live this kind of lifestyle. We can find freedom from that and rest in the knowledge that I don't have to be enough. I am not perfect, and that's okay, because I am just called to be with perfection, to be with the one who is enough. I'm going to call the band back up at this time, and we're just going to go into a time of worship. And I'm really, really excited that Dana actually came up to me last week, and she's like, hey, Shiori, here's a set list for this Sunday. I think we're going to do this song after you message. What do you think? And I was kind of like, wow, and it's a song that I already knew, and I was like, that's actually one of my favorite songs. And it's a song that I've loved for many, many years. And it's actually a song that I used to sing to myself a lot when I just kind of needed a reminder of this truth in my life. And I really want us to just go into this time of worship and really reflect and make these lyrics our prayer. And the chorus of this song, it says, I am no longer a slave to fear, but I'm a child of God. And guys, I really want that to be our prayer and our truth that we can just accept this morning, that we can be free from our fears, right? And we are no longer slaves. We are no longer bound to the expectations of the world that says you need to be like this or you need to be like that. But rather, we can be free and we can place our identity in the truth that says, I am a child of God, that says, I am not perfect, but Jesus is. And I am his child and I am loved by him. But while I was still a sinner, Jesus came down, he died for me. And let's accept that truth, guys, this morning and place our identity not in our achievements or worldly praise, right? Not place our identity or our worth in how many friends we have or how good our grades are or how much people like us, but rather place our identity in the truth that Jesus loved and died for us and that we are his children, that he wants relationship with us. He wants to know us. He wants us to get to know him and to experience the peace that only he can give, that we will never fully be satisfied by what the world has to offer, right? We will never meet their expectations. We'll never have the most amount of friends. We'll never make the most amount of money that will truly be fully satisfied. So why do we try, right? Why do we try to meet the expectations of a world that hated a sinless man? But rather, we can have a relationship with that sinless man, that perfect man, that's Jesus. And he says, hey, you're not enough. But you know what? I'm enough for you. And guys, I keep saying it because I just want you guys to understand that this morning. So as we sing this song, I really want you to sing out and grasp that truth this morning because it's so important. And let's make that our prayer and let's make it our reality that I am no longer a slave to fear. I am no longer bound by what the world says, but rather I am a child of God and I place my identity in that and I place my trust in Him and I'm safe and I find peace and I find belonging. And I experience His love and His joy that only He can give to me. That the world, while it's full of empty promises, it cannot offer you that, but rather Jesus, He can give you that love. He can give you that peace. I'm going to invite you guys to stand up at this time, and we're just going to sing this song together. And again, let's just sing it out, and let's make that our prayer this morning. Let's just declare that, right? I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear, but a child of God. So I'm just going to give it up to the band, and they're just going to lead us through that this morning.